So, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the nation last night and announcing a number of interventions to deal with the issue of illegal migration. So, he's put forward a number of government interventions to tackle this crisis, which includes a phased relocation of refugee reception centers to border posts, setting up dedicated courts to fast track the deportation of undocumented migrants, discontinuing the Green ID book, and increasing penalties, including imprisonment, for employers who violate immigration laws. So joining me on the line now, my first guest on this conversation is Njabulo Nzuza, who is the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. Deputy Minister, thank you for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to all the listeners at home.
So it's all good and well to have all these different interventions the president has announced, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to money. Is there money being put behind these interventions, and when are we going to start that flickering in?
Well, some of them already have resources committed to it, Clement. One of the things that I think is most immediate that the president talked about, which we might have missed, is the issue of the scaling up of what we call the ETA, which is the Electronic Travel Authorization. That one we've been given a target of July 2026, which is just a month away, to make sure that we capture biometrics for all of those who are coming in for short stay arrivals, which will allow us to be able to also load up their facial recognition capabilities. Now, how does this solve the problem, Clement? Remember that our neighbors like Zimbabwe, Lesotho, most of them have 90-day stay visas, and that is where the problems start. They come into the country and then they overstay, and you have limited capability of tracking them, and then they become illegal into the country. But with us being able to capture their biometrics, it means that any movement they then make throughout the country in terms of opening bank accounts, whatever they do, will be able to trace them with those biometrics. So for me, that is very, very important, and it has a shorter stay.
Well, the challenge
It
is...
has a shorter implementation period. Sorry.
Okay. The challenge, though, is we already have people in this country, some of whom are here illegally. We don't have any records of them. How do we deal with that? I see that the president speaks about special courts being dedicated to help with the deportation. But how do we deal with the many people, and we still don't even know how many people are illegal immigrants in this country. So what's the time period for dealing with those who are already here because we still don't have their records?
Well, we had a JCPS meeting, remember, building up to the announcements that were made by the president yesterday. We sort of sat at the back and prepared all the immediate interventions. And one of them is around the issue of the inspections that will now be heightened. We did some last week in Newcastle, myself with Labour, Deputy Minister Sbia and police. We're also going to be doing more during the course of this week. But we also did another one in Western Cape. But those ones, they are not in the main designed to be heightened because we are there. They are to be heightened because they are now joint operations that will be running in various areas in the country. And those ones are specific inspectorate operations. Now, the issue of the courts, they help us because before you deport a person, you must take them before a magistrate. That's what the law says. And then the process becomes long. But with the specialized courts now, it's going to be much easier for us to be able to pick up a person, then take them to those specialized courts, and then deport those people. Obviously, it comes at a very high cost, and I'm happy that even the embassies now, they've been coming up saying that they are repatriating their citizens, which is something they have not been paying for. In the past, when we deport people, we had to pay ourselves. For now, we are going to be sending the bills to those various embassies because we understand that they do have financial resources. So there must be cooperation also at that level. So the heightened inspections will help us deal with those who are already within the country illegally.
Okay, hold on. I need to make sure I'm hearing you clearly. Are you saying that it's been resolved that as you deport these illegal foreigners, you're going to be sending the bill to their embassies? Because, of course, the embassies have arranged their own travels lately, like the Uganda, I think Malawi as well was arranging for people who want to leave, who are feeling threatened. But that's not really deportation. Are you saying going forward, you're going to be sending the bill to the embassies?
Yeah, Clement, let me just make it very clear on that one. We will previously deport people and then we will have to foot the bill because we have been doing it for quite some time. It's quite an expensive thing. But what we have seen now is that ideally we should be sending the bill to those various embassies. And I think that's what we need to start doing now. We are having discussions with the Department of Labor, also with the Department of DECO and those embassies that, look, if we find people, will be sending the bill to you so that you can be able to pay for the bill. So that's what ought to be happening. It's not happening right now. And that is why I'm crying about it, that, look, we are paying quite a lot of money deporting citizens of other countries. With some of the other countries, we have sort of an agreement with them that those people who come from them will have to then pay for them to go back. So when we sign, for instance, the 90-day stay visa-free arrangements that we'll have had with countries like Kenya and so on, we have a returns agreement with them that your citizens, when we have found them to have overstayed in the country, that returns agreement then kicks in so that we do not carry the financial burden alone.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is that those are some of the avenues that we need to now start thinking of doing and implementing here.
How many immigration inspectors do we have? Because we're celebrating labor inspectors, but I mean, my understanding is that we have about 800. Are you able to confirm that?
Yes, we don't have a lot of inspectors, Clement, within the country in the inspectorate unit, and that is what when we decide the issue of capacitation, because there was a period where the security cluster was heavily defunded. And that is why now we are seeing the problems that we are seeing here today. So we need to build capacity, and that we agree that we cannot be able to reach each and every one of them. But what we are doing now is relying more on technology as against relying on physical verification. Now, when I talk about the issue of capturing biometrics, that will mean everywhere a person goes. If you go to ShopRite and then you say, this is your number, you want to open a card, or you go to a bank, they capture your biometrics, we are able to follow you through in the ecosystem without us having to physically locate you where you are.
I get that. But again, as I said, the issue is not only for future.
It's very beneficial. So the upscaling of...
So that's what will come up, right, with the investment in technology. But I'm saying the concerns that are being raised by the marchers is that there are people already here whom we don't have records of. And I'm saying the most basic thing I would have thought is just ensure that there are enough inspectors. I mean, how could you have 800 inspectors who are responsible for all the 9 provinces in this country? And you think you'll root out illegal immigration? Deputy Minister?
Yeah, the system that we are working with now, remember, as I told you, that we are working on a joint... yes, as I said, Clement, can you still hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Clement, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying, remember, last week, 2 weeks back, there was a JCPS announced operations that we'll be doing, which means that the capacity that we have as Home Affairs will now be backed up by the police. It will now be backed up by labor, working with our inspectors. For instance, you can have about 5 inspectors at any given moment, but you find that they are working with about 20 police officers and so on. So that will increase the impact that we'll make on the ground. We are also physically involved in those joint operations. As I've indicated, we've done one in the Western Cape, we did another one in Newcastle, there's more that we'll be doing. But what we are also doing there is that we are not coming as deputy ministers and just inspecting on those particular days. We are creating the linkages for those cells of the police, labor, as well as Home Affairs. Even when we are gone, we expect them to do their jobs. What will also make it easy to process them is what the president calls specialized courts now. Because when you deport a person, you must take them through court. So now if you have 5 5 immigration officers from Home Affairs, as well as 10 or 20 more so police, then it means we are able to process them much quicker with much more speed.
What
but
about,
as I've said, the ETA is not a long-term issue. We have been given July 2026 this year to roll it out and expand it.
okay, what about your own inefficiencies, though, as Home Affairs Deputy Minister? Because there are people, for instance, that have faced delays with visa processing for qualification of foreigners. So the delay creates those loopholes that then leads to even instances of corruption. There are people also sending me WhatsApp messages and saying, please ask about the issue of just the process of becoming citizens, because we've been waiting for 3 years. So that seems to be the problem as well, is you've got your own officials who maybe the system is simply way too slow and it leads to people just sticking around, or two, they've got to pay bribes for them to get their own documentations. And if they don't pay those bribes, then they're out, in the zoo, and everybody comes and says, well, you're not here legally, without understanding the context.
But I'm very happy you asked that question, Clement, because when it comes to the issue of corruption, we've made it very clear that we are not going to tolerate it. And how do we do that? We introduced the SIU to say, let's clean up the environment that is there some years back. The report is out now. We've had about 249 referrals to the NPA for prosecution and arrest, which means that the environment inside Home Affairs is being sanitized for purposes of corruption. I understand that some people will say, well, we are illegal in the country because we have not been receiving our documents from Home Affairs. And I must make it very clear, it's not that every person who comes to you, you must then issue them with a document, because our system was clogged by economic migrants who then presented themselves as refugees or as asylum seekers seeking refuge in the country, whereas their claims were not legitimate. And that happened around the period when there was a global meltdown, where we saw a skyrocketing number of people who were applying for asylum. And because of the blue sky approach, I say blue sky approach, because a person can then take you to appeal, ultimately to court. Others will launch in new application. And that is why we had to fight that case that we won in the court. That said, you can't have a person perpetually launching new applications, and then at the end of the day, they come and say, well, we don't have documents because Home Affairs is not giving us documents, whereas they cannot prove their claim of seeking asylum in the country.
All right, got it. Njabulo Nzuza, I have to stop it there because I'm out of time, but thank you so much for coming through. He's the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. Let me bring in Ronald Lamola now, who is the Minister of International Relations. Minister, thank you for also joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and to the listeners of Radio 702.
Last night, the President said through SADC, they will be seeking to find sustainable solutions to this crisis of illegal immigration. Help us understand the responsibility of these envoys that will now go to other countries. What are they going to be? What's the mandate?
Yeah, thank you very much, Clement. As you are aware, the African Union has got a migration protocol, which we also have at the SADC level, which advocates for regular migration that is well managed, that is for economic purposes, that deals with a number of issues impacting migrants. And some of it is incorporated in our white paper on migration. I'm glad you had a discussion with Nzuza. I heard him on some of the aspects. Some of the issues relates to the push and pull factors, the root causes of migration, including issues of first country, of safety, and so forth, which are part of international migration law. And then, as you look in our country, the challenge that we do have is that the aspects of irregular migration, we are one of the highest receiving countries, particularly of economic migrants. So all these protocols direct how such should be handled. So the envoys will be engaging with the other member states of the AU and of SADC in relations to also our responsibility, but also in relations to the responsibilities of those countries.
Yeah. And what one of the things Deputy Minister Nzuza mentioned is that the bills for deportation will now be sent to the embassies. Is this something the various governments on the continent have agreed to, or is that a conversation that's still underway?
It is part of some of those aspects of the treaties or the protocols I have referred to. And that will also be a conversation that our governments will have to have with some of these countries. I mean, for example, Ghana has brought or hired an aircraft to South Africa to carry some of their nationals, and Home Affairs has been doing this for years at their own coast. According to these protocols, such bills should be sent to those countries, and all that. So all these issues have to be ironed out, be engaged. But the more broader issue, Clement, is the key issue of regional integration, because we are dealing, in particular on the southern tip, South Africa, we are dealing more on economic migration. What becomes our role as the most industrialized country to support economic growth in all these countries in terms of our investments, in terms of our companies, playing a role to grow the economy in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in Ghana, and all parts of the continent. Okay. But also reciprocal also from them, so that the economic reciprocity enables the dynamism that comes with migration, that is regular, that helps economies to grow.
Yeah. Ronald Lamola, Minister of International Relations, thank you for joining us.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.